This is Tim.
And Malele.
This is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics, sponsored by ComicsNow.com. We've got, I guess, several things to talk about today. First of all, I wanted to respond to this email that I received. And I don't think that this person, whose name is apparently M.M. Carlton, apparently he or she doesn't actually listen to the podcast. They just happened across the Global Comics site. And this message just sort of starts in the middle, but it says, "Now, granted, I've only read 2 of the comics posted on this site, but the content here strikes me as somewhat off-putting. The main thing is I have no idea what your site is going for. It doesn't seem to be a community for webcomics from the limited comics it offers, but it doesn't have the professional content of a showcase site like Boxcar Comics. What do you call Spider Hag? What exactly are you aiming for? I read Kid Intense, which was fairly linear, and I can't help but wonder what you plan on doing with it. Sure, it's displayed here, but you could display it elsewhere online, and on a site it would get the critiques and suggestions to make it a more well-rounded comic. I guess my main question really is, why would I want to host my comic on this site?" Okay, well, as I was telling Malele before we started recording, I've been feeling sort of overwhelmed in terms of the amount of things I can fit into the time that I have available. But what this message made me feel like doing if I had the time was to create a completely new site that would be like deconcomics.com or something, just like a site for the podcast. The thing about the Global Comics site is that originally it was, when I first came up with it, like in 2001 or 2, I had put an ad in Metropolis, which is a local free magazine that a lot of foreigners in Tokyo pick up, and I was looking for people to help me put together a comics community site. And we communicated online a little bit, and some people were calling for a chance to meet, but the thing is, I live kind of outer Tokyo and everybody else lived inner Tokyo, and at the time I was married and everything, and I just didn't, it was hard for me to try to get away to have a meeting with these people, and then they all just kind of fell away and I never heard from them again. And so then the site became basically just a place to put Spider Hag and then this podcast when we started it at the end of 2005. So it isn't really functioning, it isn't at all functioning as a comics web community site, but it still sort of looks like it's trying to, even though the main thing that gets updated on it is this podcast. So, if I had the time, I would make a, just trash it out and make a site for this podcast. If anybody's willing to do it cheap,
No.
Then it would look cheap, probably.
No, I don't think it has to be quite like that. But I think, putting out the call, like this guy or girl wants to see something really streamlined and wants a comic super site, which we are not.
Yeah.
But there are sites out there like that. So I kind of wonder, with that available, why he takes the time to write a letter to complain. From my perspective, as kind of like a comics guy on the fringe, or just someone who enjoys the medium of comics, creating more than reading, but I do this because I enjoy talking about comics. I'm not getting paid for this. In fact,
it's costing you money.
Yeah, it is costing money. It doesn't cost me money for hosting or anything because I'm not hosting it, but It costs me money for the drinks I have to get in this karaoke box to and paying for the room to record the podcast. And it's costing me my time. This is time that I could be using to make comics or to just relax rather than do this. But I mean, I enjoy doing it, so I do it, and I do it for free. But it seems to me that this person found no redeeming quality about the website, yet still wanted to comment, and I just can't understand that.
I'm a little offended that he seemed to see Kid Intense as the best comic on the site, and not mine. It doesn't even mention Spider Hag.
Well, I don't know. I haven't looked at the site recently. It could be about placement, but
well, you look at the front page and podcast is at the top,
yeah,
and then comics, and the first one is Spider Hag, and the second one I believe is Kid Intense.
Okay. To be honest, I have no idea what this was about.
Yeah,
because we're also kind of starting in the middle of the email. Who starts an email now?
Yeah, it's interesting to me. For both this podcast and like my other podcast or the column that I write for English study, I'll get occasional emails like this with no greeting and no closing. They don't sign it, and they usually don't even address me.
Yeah, I mean, to his question, it's a fair question. Why should I? And my answer is, well, maybe you shouldn't. I mean, it's a simple choice. We're offering advice to anyone who's listening. Anyone who digs our opinions, anybody who wants another voice added to all of the criticism that they've heard or praise that they've heard about their comics so far. We offer it to anybody who wants to send anything our way. And if no one sends anything, that's okay too.
Yeah, but if you'd like to send us your comic to critique, podcast@globalcomics.net is the email address. So, and we did talk about Kid Intense on the podcast a few months ago.
Yeah, about 3 times.
Mainly just once. I mean, he sent several installments of it. I haven't heard from him in a long time, though.
Well, I think we're yesterday's thing for him. We are now. Do you have anything else to say to this person?
Not really. I guess just if he wants that kind of site, then he should visit that kind of site instead of this site. But
okay. Granted, the website may need an update because it's not focusing on exactly what we're doing with the podcast. And while Spider Hag is on hiatus, it's not really serving that purpose either. It's just kind of right now it's a place marker, and I think that's fine for now. We're not looking to become rich or famous from this podcast anyway.
No. So, next topic is the recent decision about the Schuster and Siegel ownership of the Superman copyright, or at least the rights to Action Comics #1. I'll put links on globalcomics.net to the articles that we've been just now reading from Comic Book Resources, from CBR. But basically, how can we sum this up? There's so much written about it, but
basically, 2 guys in their youth made a story, and sold the story.
Yeah, shopped it around, I guess, to several other places before they sold it.
But they sold the story, were then hired on to do more stories. Then, because they were no longer the copyright holders, they were fired from the project. or one was fired outright, and the other one was removed, moved on to other stories, and then came back and did, I guess, guest spots on his own creation later, at least according to some of the stuff we've read. I'm not familiar with the Superman history that much, or the history of the writers. So, about 50% of this podcast, I'll be speaking out of my ass. But, well, at least more than usual.
So, now, I don't know that this case proves anything about what's happening now, because copyright laws have changed, but and also it was the fact that first issue was not done as work for hire. It was completed before DC or their predecessor, whoever it was, before they ever saw the work. It was done. They didn't ask Siegel and Schuster to do Action Comics #1, which is kind of the basis by which their estates can claim rights to it. But of course, as the articles that we've been looking at do mention, it's still the case that somebody who walks in with something, some new comic or new idea for a movie, and really believes in their work and how profitable it could be, can really be ripe pickings for getting ripped off.
Well, I think, yeah, a lot of what we're reading through these articles is stuff that's still happening today. Nothing's changed.
Yeah, just doing it in different ways.
Yeah, I think for the major companies, we're talking about Marvel and DC, and maybe for some of the newer companies, yeah. But there are some companies that are saying, okay, well, look, you're the copyright holder of the book. We just want to publish it. We make our money back. We reserve the right to do licensing with you if the comic's a hit, and you get paid for that. And so they have a standard contract on that, and how they work the money from that. So I think if there is any difference, some people do know that they can find companies that will let them keep the copyright, and so they may be looking for that rather than just selling it to the first one who offers them money, which is actually quite a good thing. And I think Dark Horse was the first large publisher to do that. I'm not sure how large they were when they started offering creator license. What would you call it? Creator.
So creators can own their characters.
Yeah, creator-owned comics. But it's a good idea, and I quite like that idea. And I've done that with Dark Horse. I did one creator-owned comic. It wasn't that popular. The character dried up, and the character's mine again in 5 years without owning Dark Horse Jack. So if I write more stories and sell them to other publishers, that's fine too.
Was that Miguel?
Yeah. But yeah, sorry, I'm dry. I'm shooting blanks.
You were saying that this applies to you and Kumar, and you're trying to sell Weird Crime Theater.
Yeah, Kumar and I have been working on Weird Crime Theater for a couple of years now. I'm not sure how much Kumar wants me to talk about this. So if you're listening, Kumar, sorry, I'm letting the cat out. Basically, we've been trying to sell the project for a while, but I mean, it was basically, it was a project that we kind of went into thinking, well, we'll just do what we want to do. So he wrote the script that he wanted to write, and I did the artwork that I wanted to do. And although they didn't quite match on the page, we still kind of, hustled through it, and then did a couple more. And It took, with all the turmoil and drama in my life, it took a couple of years to get through the first issue. I think it was the first 17 pages, actually. Took like a year and a half, 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But basically we got through it, and I still like the characters, and I think Kumar likes the characters quite a bit too. So we continued on. We shopped it around for a long time, and no one was picking it up. We were both working for Dark Horse at the time, and we shopped it to our editors, and everybody just kind of looked at us and said, no. One guy said, yeah, we could publish it, but you wouldn't make any money. It's like, no, that's fine, we don't need to make any money, we just want it published. And that was kind of our mindset, just get it out there into the stands. Not to the point of build it and they will come. Or we'll be rich as soon as it hits the stands. It'll like bump Superman off the racks and shit. So it wasn't quite that kind of thing. It's more of a, the company publishes something, you get comps, you see it at the bookshops, you can point to it and tell the clerk, hey, that's mine. I fucking wrote that. I fucking drew that. And it's something that you've made. It's your baby out there in the world.
Sure.
And I think that's the thing that we wanted most of all, or at least the thing that I wanted from it. Money is always nice, but I always look at that as more of the pipe dream than the actual plan. At least with comics. And
so, with the publisher that you're talking to now, would it be creator owned?
Yeah. It would be. That was with my Dark Horse experience being my first experience in mainstream comics. I wasn't really considering giving up any copyright to any other company for something that I helped create.
Yeah.
I don't know how Kumar feels about it, but basically one of the things that we agreed was that if one of us walks, that's the end of the project. And so far, neither of us have walked, although I think Kumar thinks I'm going to. He's going to be sorely surprised to find that I'm staying. But and I'll be working on this comic till I'm dead, but and he'll be waiting for that last page for a long, long time. But yeah, we're looking at another publisher now. I don't know if Kumar said the name of the publisher, but I kind of want to leave it off for now because we don't know for sure if they're gonna. I don't have a contract in my hand, but they're courting us again. So
yeah. Yeah, when he was on the podcast, he didn't mention the name. So
yeah.
I don't think.
I remember you saying that he didn't want to talk about it too much, which is
yeah.
why I feel almost guilty about talking about it now. And basically, what it comes down to is they've agreed to publish our comic. They want to publish it as one graphic novel, which stands to make better money than floppies.
Yeah, longer shelf life.
Yeah, and all of that. And they've been having trouble themselves as a publisher, and so we were on, and then suddenly we were off because they were having trouble, and then now we're on again. But still, we have no contract yet, and I think they're waiting for us to finish up some last little bits on the project before we.
And how much is in the can at the moment?
I'd say a good 60%.
How many pages?
They want 80.
Okay, and how many pages are have you finished drawing?
Somewhere around 50.
Okay.
45, 50. I'm not exactly sure of the page count, but and Kumar has plenty of stories that he's already written. So it's just a matter of me playing catch up. I mean, the project's already written, so he just has to wait for me. But as it stands right now, I'm trying to get it together so it gets published this year. or at least is ready by Comic-Con 2009.
So how are your other projects coming? You've been focusing mostly on Weird Crime Theater, or
I've been focusing on Weird Crime Theater, and I've been working on some other stuff with Dale. And I've been trying to kind of... I was writing comics online for a couple of months, and I took a break to kind of deal with other things because I've got
the ones for Illustration Friday.
Yeah, so I was doing that, and then I had to kind of break for other stuff. I was trying to work on Kodansha, the Kodansha project, Dale's project, Weird Crime Theater, and then Dark Horse calls me, and yeah, so I've got so much shit to deal with. So
what does Dark Horse want you to do, or can you talk about it?
Not as far as I know. So I'll just say that Dark Horse called me.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not a big project, and it has nothing to do with drawing. So
no.
It's more of just design work. But
something more like you did before with the anime.
Yeah, kind of. I don't know exactly where it came from. I think it's American, but yeah. Anyway, the as far as the Weird Crime Theater thing goes, the fact that we're not getting any money from this company outright, like we're not going to just make it and they'll give us a lump sum and then more if it sells well.
No advance.
Yeah, no. Well, there's no advance. Basically, they'll make it, and once their costs for making it are paid down, we will start to see a percentage. I don't remember exactly what the percentage is, but it doesn't matter. We don't expect to see money on it, or at least I don't. When it comes to merchandising, I would like to see some of that, and expect to see that if merchandising gets made. But I think what we've got is a really fucking bizarre comic. Every time I look at the first 20 pages, it looks really tortured. Because I was in such a bad way when I drew them. I can't remember exactly what was running through my life, but I just remember that year was hard, whatever year that was. But yeah. But anyway, yeah, it kind of comes down to the same sort of thing as the Superman thing, in the idea that we like comics, we want to make comics, we want to publish comics, and the money doesn't really matter. But if Weird Crime Theater were to suddenly hit, but we had sold the copyright, we'd be not exactly in the same situation as them, because they've got the copyright laws that kind of futzed with it. But I think to a certain extent we would feel that we were cheated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that it's natural that people would feel cheated. They didn't expect it to hit quite that well, and there's perhaps some question here in the Superman stuff as to whether or not the reason why Superman is because of the original creators, or because of DC Comics and their marketing and the add-ons that they've introduced over the years. Because of the movies, because of the toy line, because of the TV show back in the 50s. Yeah. So I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to divide in my mind. I don't see it as really. And I was talking to Pat, not Pat, but the other Pat. And
W or G?
Well, I was hanging out with both of them today, and
I see.
It was W who made the point of W. Yeah, he made the point of it's both of them. You can't have one. You can't have Superman without one of them, the company or the creators.
Damn.
And so had they published through another company, it might not have worked.
Yeah, it would have gone off in a different direction.
It might have worked, but it might not have either. I mean, but who's to say? Maybe the reason why they made Superman was because someone's mother said something at a party that one of their mothers had. You never know. But I mean, that's kind of the question, though. I mean, how badly do you want to be in comics? And once you've made your comic and it's out there, and it flies, but you're not connected to it anymore, or it flops, but you are connected to it. Either way, you're not going to get money. But what do you do from there?
Well, I'm in a little bit that position. I mean, the English Study podcast and the column are doing well, but because of the lousy publisher I had, the book didn't do so well.
Yeah, I remember talking about that. Those guys are bastards.
So I certainly don't want to go through them again, and they probably don't want to either because the book didn't sell well.
I
wonder why. But then, I mean, I don't really have... I can't say to a different publisher, this book sold really well, so I'd like you to publish a sequel. So...
So the copyright is theirs or yours?
Copyright's mine.
Okay, so...
Copyright's not an issue.
But basically you could repackage and resell the book through another publisher.
Or, the additional columns that have come out since then, because that book won't contain like 70-some columns, and I've done a total of like 250 at this point.
Okay.
So I could package up a different set to put out as a new book. But that's another issue, of course, is time.
Yeah.
And, the columns are written, but if it's like the other one, I'll need to do some additional writing for each column to kind of, fill it out.
But I think for all of us, that there's an experience that we've had. I mean, if we've had any experience with the comics industry, we've all had kind of a similar... We've either seen or experienced directly this kind of situation where you're giving up something, or what you've printed is not what you originally intended, or the money was not there, or some people even being out and out ripped off.
Yeah, I mean, there are more recent examples of creators who claimed that they should have owned some copyright, like Steve Gerber or Marv Wolfman. I know they both had complaints with Marvel about work that they did that they thought that they should have had some ownership of.
Yeah. I don't know. Personally, I think Arthur Adams should have Longshot. Although
Longshot is...
He's the guy dressed in black leather with the Kajagoogoo haircut. And I don't remember his power exactly, but he's like an 80s character. I think they
kind of X-Men?
They revamped him into Cable. Gave him gray hair and they got rid of the mullet.
I wonder if any of our listeners remember Kajagoogoo.
Am I giving away my age here? Yeah, 37, for those who are counting.
Deconstructing Comics is sponsored by ComicsNow.com. Get up to 30% off everything in stock, or join their subscription service and get 35% off, with no minimum order. I have my comics delivered monthly, but you can choose to have them sent bi-weekly or weekly. For more information, contact them through the contact page at ComicsNow.com. Many of the comics we review on this podcast are supplied by ComicsNow.com, and they also provide Eric's newsletter, featured on our site, globalcomics.net. Our theme song is performed by Firewater. Let us give you some feedback on your comic. Send it to us at podcast@globalcomics.net, and we'll review it on the show. Also, if you'd like to send us a donation to help keep the show going, use the PayPal link on the podcast page at globalcomics.net. Next week, Kumar will be here to talk about Henry Kiyama's The Four Immigrants manga. Till then, thanks for listening. This is Tim. See you next week on Deconstructing Comics.